Bumpy Johnson executed his own son for justice. 20 years later, the woman he abandoned returns with a son he never knew existed and a plan to destroy everything. 72 hours to choose between blood and Harlem. What did Bumpy do that made his greatest enemy cry at his funeral to understand how it all led here? We go back to where it truly began. October 3rd, 1952, Thursday, 2:17 in the morning. Claudette Williams woke up to the smell of cigarettes and leather, her head pounding like someone had taken a hammer to her skull. The world was moving, rocking, vibrating beneath her. Not a dream, not a nightmare. Reality. She was in a car. Hands bound behind her back with rope that cut into her wrists, duct tape across her mouth. Lying on the floor of the back seat where her face pressed against something sticky and metallic. Blood. Maybe. Old blood. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness. Through the gap between the front seats, she saw the back of two heads. Men. Smoking. Laughing about something she couldn't quite hear over the engine noise and the jazz music playing low on the radio. The car hit a pothole. Her head slammed against the door. Pain exploded behind her eyes. She bit down on the scream, trying to escape through the tape. Where was she? How did she get here? Think. Claudette. Think. The last thing she remembered was walking. Walking home from May's photography studio on 125th Street. Late shift developing film for white families who wanted their wedding photos, their baby pictures, their graduation portraits. She'd stayed until 1 in the morning because Mr. Steinberg needed 50 prints by Friday and Claudette needed the overtime pay. 27 years old, living in a one-room apartment above a butcher shop, sending half her wages to her mother in South Carolina. Every extra dollar mattered. Then the memory hit her like cold water. 12 hours earlier, Wednesday, 2:15 in the afternoon. She'd been walking to the studio, cutting through the alley behind Morningside Park to save 5 minutes, when she heard voices, male voices, angry. The kind of angry that made smart people turn around and walk the other way. But Claudette had stopped, frozen, because she recognized one of the voices, Vincent Calabrese. Everyone in Harlem knew Vincent. Tall, broad-shouldered, walked like he owned every sidewalk his feet touched. Enforcer for Frank Costello's operation. The kind of man who broke fingers for late payments and didn't lose sleep over it. Claudette had pressed herself against the brick wall, held her breath, prayed they hadn't seen her, through the gap between two dumpsters. She watched 5 men standing in a circle. Vincent and 4 others she didn't recognize. White men. Expensive suits. One of them opened a briefcase. Even from 15 feet away, Claudette could see what was inside. Plastic bags filled with white powder. Heroin. Enough to put half of Harlem in the ground. But it wasn't the drugs that made her blood run cold. It was the other man. The one taking the briefcase. NYPD uniform. Badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. Police Chief Richard Morrison. She'd seen his face in the newspaper just last week, shaking hands with the mayor, promising to clean up the streets of Harlem. Her hands had moved on instinct. The camera. Mr. Steinberg's Leica, the expensive one he let her borrow to practice with on her lunch breaks. She'd raised it slowly, carefully, framed the shot through the viewfinder, Vincent handing the briefcase to Chief Morrison, Morrison counting cash, another man in a gray suit watching from the side, face partially visible. Click. The shutter sound seemed loud as a gunshot in her ears. Vincent's head snapped up, his eyes locked on hers. Run. Claudette had run like her life depended on it because it did. Up the fire escape of the nearest building, the camera clutched to her chest, her heart trying to punch through her ribs. Behind her, footsteps, shouting, the metallic sound of a gun being cocked. She'd climbed 3 stories, swung herself onto the roof, kept running. Harlem's rooftops were a maze if you knew them. Clotheslines and pigeon coops and air vents. She'd jumped gaps between buildings that would have killed her if she'd looked down. A bullet had whizzed past her head, punched a hole through a water tank. Water sprayed everywhere. She'd slipped, caught herself, kept moving. Another roof. Another jump. Her lungs were fire. Her legs were concrete. But she couldn't stop. Behind her, 3 men. Then 2. Then 1. Then none. She'd made it to 131st Street. Climbed down into an alley, hidden behind a row of trash cans for 20 minutes until her hands stopped shaking. They hadn't found her. She'd escaped. But she still had the camera. Still had the film. Still had evidence that could destroy Frank Costello's entire operation and put the chief of police in prison for the rest of his life. That's when the real problem had started. The car jerked to a stop. Present tense. Present danger. Claudette's thoughts snapped back to now. The driver killed the engine. Doors opened. Hands grabbed her arms, hauled her out of the back seat like a sack of potatoes. She tried to scream through the tape, tried to kick. One of them hit her across the face. Stars exploded in her vision. "Shut up," a voice said. Vincent. She recognized it now. "You should have minded your business, girl." They were at the docks. Pier 47. She could smell the Hudson River, see the water reflecting moonlight, hear the creak of boats rocking against their moorings. A warehouse loomed ahead of them. Maritime Storage. Unit 12. The same place she'd heard about in whispered conversations at the salon. The place where people who crossed Frank Costello went to disappear. Terror locked her muscles. This was it. This was how she died. 27 years old. Unmarried. Childless. Her mother would never know what happened. The police wouldn't investigate. Just another colored girl from Harlem who probably got herself mixed up in something she shouldn't have. But then Vincent made a mistake. A small one. Fatal. He turned his back to light a cigarette. Just for 3 seconds. The man holding Claudette's left arm loosened his grip for 1 second to adjust his hat. That's all she needed. Claudette slammed her head backward into his nose, felt the crunch, heard him scream. She twisted, drove her knee into Vincent's groin with everything she had. He doubled over. She ran. Hands still bound, tape still covering her mouth. She ran toward the water because it was the only direction they weren't. Behind her, shouting. Footsteps. A gunshot. The bullet hit a lamppost 3 inches from her head. She dove between 2 storage containers, scrambled through the darkness, emerged on the other side near the street. A car was coming. Red light ahead. She sprinted toward the intersection, praying. The car slowed. Red sedan. The driver was looking at a map, not paying attention. She positioned herself. The car stopped. She grabbed the passenger door handle. Locked. She slammed her elbow through the window. Glass shattered. The driver screamed. She reached through. Unlocked the door. Threw herself across the front seat. The driver was an elderly woman. White. Terrified. Fumbling with her purse. "Drive." Claudette tried to shout through the tape. It came out as muffled desperation. The woman stared at her. Stared at the blood running down Claudette's face. Stared at the 3 men sprinting toward them 50 feet away. The light turned green. The woman floored it. 3 blocks. That's all Claudette needed. She knew exactly where to go. Only one person in New York could protect her now. Only one person powerful enough to stand between her and Frank Costello's vengeance. 145th and Edgecombe, she managed to say through the tape, the words barely intelligible. The woman understood. She drove. 5 minutes later, Claudette tumbled out of the car in front of a Harlem brownstone, the most famous brownstone in the neighborhood. Everyone knew who lived here. The woman drove away without a word, tires screeching. Smart. Get away from the trouble. Get away from the girl who would be dead by morning. Claudette stumbled up the steps, bound hands making it impossible to knock properly. She kicked the door. Again. Kept kicking until her foot felt broken. The door opened. Mamie Johnson stood there in her nightgown, hair wrapped, eyes widening at the sight before her. She knew Claudette. They'd been friends since childhood. Played hopscotch on the same cracked sidewalks. Shared their first cigarette behind the church. But Mamie had married well. Married smart. Married the one man in Harlem who could protect her from anything. Bumpy. Mamie's voice could cut through steel. Get down here. Now. What happened next was why Claudette had run here instead of to the police. Why she'd risked leading Vincent and his men to this doorstep. Because the police wouldn't help. The police were part of the problem, but Ellsworth Raymond Johnson. Bumpy Johnson, he helped people the law wouldn't touch. Bumpy came down the stairs like a force of nature. 55 years old, medium build, wearing reading glasses and a silk robe. But something about him made the air feel heavier, dangerous. He took one look at Claudette, at the blood, at the rope, at the terror in her eyes. His face went still, the kind of stillness that happened in predators before they struck. He pulled a knife from somewhere inside his robe, cut through the rope binding her wrists, peeled the tape from her mouth gently. His hands were steady. His voice was calm. Who? Not how are you? Not what happened. Just who? Claudette's words tumbled out like water breaking through a dam. The alley, the photographs, Vincent Calabrese, Chief Morrison, the drugs, the chase, the kidnapping, the near death at the docks, and most importantly, the camera, the film still inside it, evidence that could burn down half of New York's power structure. Where's the camera now? Bumpy asked. His voice was conversational, pleasant. Like they were discussing the weather. My apartment, under the floorboards beneath my bed. I hid it there before they grabbed me. Bumpy looked at Illinois Gordon, his right-hand man for 23 years, who'd appeared in the doorway like a summoned ghost. 6 feet 4 inches, built like a boxer, loyal as a dog. Illinois didn't need instructions. He left immediately. 30 minutes later, Illinois returned with the camera. Bumpy took it to his kitchen. Claudette and Mamie followed. He moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Darkroom chemicals, red light, developer solution. The bathroom converted into a processing lab in 10 minutes. Claudette sat at the kitchen table while Mamie cleaned the blood from her face. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear anymore, from the realization of what she'd captured, what she'd set in motion. 20 minutes later, Bumpy emerged from the bathroom. He was holding 5 photographs. Wet, dripping with developer solution. He laid them on the kitchen table under the overhead light. Everyone leaned in. The first photograph showed Vincent Calabrese handing a briefcase to Chief Richard Morrison. Their faces were clear, unmistakable. The second photo showed Morrison opening the briefcase, bags of heroin visible. The third showed Morrison counting cash. The fourth showed a different angle of the transaction, capturing a third man in a gray suit standing nearby, partially obscured. The fifth photograph made Bumpy go very, very still. The man in the gray suit had turned his head at the exact moment of the shutter click. His face was fully visible now, clean-shaven, thin, wire-rimmed glasses, conservative tie. He looked like an accountant, a businessman, someone completely unremarkable. except Bumpy recognized him. "Illinois," Bumpy said quietly. "Look at photo 5. Tell me what you see." Illinois picked up the photograph, studied it. His expression changed. "That's Special Agent Robert Hastings, FBI. Works out of the Federal Building downtown. He's been investigating organized crime in New York for 3 years. That's what he wants people to think," Bumpy said. He sat down slowly, like a man who had just been punched in the stomach. "Robert Hastings is a federal agent, yes. But he's also on Frank Costello's payroll. Has been since 1949. I've seen his name in the ledgers. Never saw his face until now." Claudette's voice was small, broken. "What does this mean?" "It means," Bumpy said, "that you didn't just photograph a drug deal. You photographed a conspiracy that goes from the streets to the police department to the federal government. You photographed the entire power structure of New York's criminal underworld and the law enforcement that's supposed to stop it, all working together." He looked at her, really looked at her, not with pity, with respect and fear. "Claudette, how many people know you took these photographs?" "Just me, and the men who chased me." "Good, because if Costello finds out this film exists, he won't just kill you. He'll kill everyone you know. Your mother, your cousins, every person you've ever spoken to. He'll burn down entire city blocks to make sure this evidence disappears." The phone rang. Everyone jumped. It was 4 in the morning. Nobody called at 4 in the morning unless someone was dead or about to be. Bumpy answered it, listened. His face betrayed nothing. "I understand," he said. "Yes, 72 hours. Thank you." He hung up, looked at Illinois. Something passed between them, an entire conversation in a single glance. "That was Detective Marcus Reed," Bumpy said. Reed was one of the few honest cops in NYPD, one of even fewer who owed Bumpy favors that actually meant something. "The FBI is planning a raid on our warehouse on Friday night, 3 days from now. They're coming for our weapons cache, our money, everything." Illinois's jaw tightened. "Who leaked it?" "Reed doesn't know. But the timing is interesting. Isn't it Claudette photographs federal agents working with Costello on Wednesday afternoon? By Thursday morning, suddenly the FBI knows exactly where to find our operation. That's not coincidence." Bumpy walked to the window, looked out at Harlem. Waking up. Thursday, October 3rd, 1952. 72 hours until everything he'd built for 30 years disappeared into federal evidence lockers. He turned back to Claudette. "How badly do you want these men punished?" "More than I want to breathe." "Good, because saving you means saving myself, which means we're going to have to do something very dangerous, very precise, and if we fail, we both die." Claudette stood up. Her legs were steady now. "What do you need me to do?" For the first time that night. Bumpy smiled. It was not a comforting smile. "First, we need to find out who in my organization sold me out to the FBI. Because this operation has a traitor. And until I know who it is, every move we make could be our last." Over the next 6 hours, Bumpy Johnson became something most people never saw. Not the gangster, not the enforcer, the strategist, the chess player who'd survived 30 years in a business where most men died before they turned 35. He sent Illinois to check the warehouse, make sure nothing was moved, nothing was disturbed. Meanwhile, he made phone calls, quiet calls, to people who owed him favors, people who knew things, people who traded information like currency. By 10 in the morning, Thursday, October 3rd, he had a list of 5 names. 5 men who'd known about the warehouse location. 5 men who'd had access to that information. 5 potential traitors. By noon, he'd eliminated 2. Both had solid alibis. Both had been nowhere near a phone when the FBI received their tip. By 3 in the afternoon, he'd eliminated a third. The man had been in Albany visiting his dying mother. Bumpy had confirmation from 3 separate sources. That left 2 names: Marcus Webb, Antoine Davis, both trusted members of his organization, both with access to everything, both with no alibis for Tuesday night when the FBI received their anonymous tip. Bumpy sat at his kitchen table. Claudette was upstairs, sleeping for the first time in 24 hours. Mamie was at the market. Illinois stood by the window, watching the street. Marcus or Antoine? Illinois said quietly. Both been with us for 5 years. Both loyal. Both proven. One of them sold us out. Bumpy's voice was granite. Question is which one, and why? The phone rang again. Illinois answered it. Listened. His face went pale. Boss, he said, covering the mouthpiece. It's Claudette's landlord. Says 5 men showed up at her apartment an hour ago. White men. Italian accents. They tore the place apart. Asked where she was. When he said he didn't know, they beat him unconscious. Bumpy's hands curled into fists. They're hunting her, which means they know she's alive, which means someone told them she escaped. Vincent, Illinois asked. No, Vincent thinks she's dead, or he'd have come here already. This is someone else. Someone who knows she got away. Someone who knows she has the photographs. Someone who's been watching us. The pieces clicked together in Bumpy's mind like a lock opening. The traitor isn't selling information to the FBI, he said slowly. The traitor is selling information to Frank Costello, the FBI raid. That's Costello's doing. He found out about our warehouse, told his federal contact, set up the raid. He's trying to remove me from the board before I figure out what he's really planning. Illinois' eyes widened. And Claudette's photographs. A complication Costello didn't expect. She saw something she wasn't supposed to see. Captured evidence that could destroy him. Now he needs her dead. The photographs destroyed. And me eliminated before I can use any of it against him. Bumpy stood, walked to his safe, pulled out a handgun, checked the chamber, loaded. Call Marcus and Antoine, he said. Tell them I need to see them both, tonight. Separate meetings. 1 at 7, 1 at 9. Don't tell either one that I'm meeting with the other. Illinois understood immediately. You're going to test them. I'm going to catch a traitor, and then I'm going to make a choice. Protect Claudette and go to war with Frank Costello, or hand her over and save my operation. You can't hand her over, Illinois said, certainty in his voice. That's not who you are. No, Bumpy said quietly, but it's who I might have to become to survive. 7 o'clock, Thursday evening. Marcus Webb arrived at Bumpy's brownstone, nervous, sweating. He sat across from Bumpy in the living room, hands clasped between his knees. Marcus, Bumpy said conversationally, I have a question. Tuesday night, where were you between 10 and midnight? Marcus's eyes shifted. Home. With my wife. Your wife who left you 3 months ago. That wife. Marcus went pale. Boss, I can explain. Explain. The words came out in a rush. Marcus had debts. Gambling debts. Owed money to Costello's loan operation. $30,000. Money he didn't have. Costello's collectors had come to him with an offer. Give them information about Bumpy's operations. The debt disappears. I didn't want to, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. But they were going to kill my daughter. My little girl. They showed me photographs of her walking to school, said accidents happen to children all the time. What was I supposed to do? Bumpy felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger. Understanding. Marcus had made the only choice a father could make: protect his child, even if it meant betraying everything else. You told them about the warehouse. Yes. You told them Claudette escaped. Yes. They asked if anyone came to your house Wednesday night. I was watching. I saw her. I had to tell them, or they'd know I was holding back. Bumpy nodded slowly. Then he pulled out his gun and shot Marcus in the head. One bullet. Clean. Marcus slumped sideways off the chair. Illinois appeared in the doorway, looked at the body, looked at Bumpy. His daughter, Illinois asked. Will be taken care of. Anonymous scholarship fund. Full ride through college. She'll never know what her father did or why he died, but she'll live. They wrapped Marcus in canvas, moved him to the basement. Tomorrow, he'd disappear into the Hudson River like so many others who'd crossed lines they shouldn't have crossed. 9 o'clock. Antoine Davis didn't show up. By 9:30, Bumpy knew why. Illinois received the phone call. Antoine was dead, found in his apartment with his throat cut. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle. Professional hit. Costello, Illinois asked. Costello. Bumpy confirmed. Marcus was the informant. Antoine figured it out, confronted him. Costello's people killed him before he could tell us. Now Marcus is dead. Antoine is dead. The trail goes cold. What now? Bumpy walked to the window, looked out at Harlem settling into night. 72 hours had become 53 hours. The FBI raid was coming. Costello's hunters were closing in on Claudette. And somewhere in this city, a woman named Victoria Costello was orchestrating something Bumpy couldn't quite see yet. But he felt it. Like pressure before a storm. Claudette came downstairs. She'd heard the gunshot, seen Illinois and Bumpy moving something heavy wrapped in canvas. She wasn't stupid. You killed someone, she said. Not a question. An observation. I killed a traitor who would have gotten us both killed. How many more people are going to die because of those photographs? As many as it takes. Claudette looked at him. At this man who'd just executed someone in his living room without hesitation, this man who was the only thing standing between her and certain death. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I'm sorry I brought this to your door. Don't be sorry. Be ready, because tomorrow I'm going to meet with Frank Costello, and when I do, one of two things happens. Either we make a deal, or we start a war that burns down New York. The phone rang. Third time that day. Bumpy answered it. A woman's voice. Smooth, cultured, familiar in a way that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Hello, Ellsworth. It's been a long time. Bumpy's entire body went rigid. He knew that voice. Hadn't heard it in 20 years, but he knew it. Victoria, he said. Illinois's head snapped around. Claudette looked confused. I hear you have something that belongs to my husband, Victoria Costello said. A girl. Some photographs. Evidence that could cause quite a bit of trouble for quite a few people. What do you want? I want to meet. Tomorrow, noon. Yankee Stadium. Just you and me. No guns. No bodyguards. We'll talk about how to resolve this situation before it gets messier than it needs to be. And if I refuse, then Friday night, when the FBI raids your warehouse, they won't find weapons and money. They'll find Claudette Williams, bound, unconscious, surrounded by enough heroin to put her in prison for life. And they'll find a signed confession from you, admitting to operating the largest drug trafficking operation in Harlem history. The line went dead. Bumpy stood there, phone in his hand, staring at nothing. His mind was racing. Victoria Costello, Frank's wife, the woman Bumpy had been in love with 25 years ago, before Frank, before power, before everything went wrong. The woman who'd disappeared from his life and married his rival, and now she was back. Illinois spoke carefully. "Boss." "What did she say?" Bumpy turned, looked at Claudette, at this woman whose survival had become tangled with his own, at the photographs that could destroy empires or build new ones. "She said," Bumpy replied slowly, "that tomorrow at noon, I'm going to find out if the woman I once loved is trying to save me or destroy me." Claudette's voice was steady, stronger than before. "And what are you going to do?" Bumpy smiled, cold, calculating, the smile of a man who'd realized he wasn't being hunted. He was being played. "I'm going to walk into that stadium," he said, "and I'm going to find out what game Victoria Costello is really playing, because this stopped being about you and your photographs the moment she got involved." He looked at Illinois, at Mamie, who'd returned from the market and was standing in the kitchen doorway, at the photographs spread across the table, at 53 hours ticking down like a bomb. "This is bigger than drugs," Bumpy said quietly. "Bigger than one police chief and one federal agent. Victoria doesn't make moves unless the stakes are everything, which means tomorrow. I'm walking into a meeting that will either save us all or kill us all." He picked up one of the photographs, studied Victoria's husband in the frame, smiling, shaking hands with criminals and lawmen alike. "And the funny thing is," Bumpy said, voice barely above a whisper, "I don't think Frank Costello knows his wife is making moves, which means Victoria is playing both sides, which means when I walk into that stadium tomorrow, I need to figure out one simple question." "What question?" Claudette asked. Bumpy looked at her. His eyes were hard, ancient, tired. "Whether Victoria Costello wants to help me destroy her husband, or whether she's setting me up to destroy myself while she takes everything we both built." Outside, somewhere in the darkness of Thursday night turning into Friday morning, a phone was ringing in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Victoria Costello stood by the window, champagne in hand, watching the city lights. She smiled, not with warmth, with satisfaction. "Hello, Ellsworth?" she said to the empty room, raising her glass in a mock toast. "It's been far too long." June 17th, 1962. 2 hours past midnight. The safe house in Brooklyn smelled like gun oil and betrayal. Bumpy Johnson sat across from Victoria Costello in a room that had witnessed 100 confessions. None as dangerous as this. She wore a black dress that cost more than most men earned in a year. Pearls at her throat. Hair swept back like she was attending the opera instead of meeting the man she'd spent 2 decades destroying. 20 years had passed since he'd last seen her this close. She'd aged like expensive wine. More potent, more intoxicating, more capable of killing you if you weren't careful. "Hello, Ellsworth." Her voice was silk over razors. "You're looking well for a dead man walking." Bumpy didn't move. Behind him, Illinois Gordon stood with his hand near his gun, every muscle coiled. Frank Costello sat slumped in the corner, breathing shallow, skin gray as ash. The man who'd ruled New York for 30 years looked like he was already halfway to the grave. "Victoria," Bumpy's voice was ice. "Let's skip the pleasantries. You orchestrated everything. The photographs, the rape, the FBI, all of it. Question is why?" She smiled. Not the practice smile of a mob wife, the genuine thing. Pleasure. "Because you taught me that power isn't given, Ellsworth. It's taken. And you took everything from me 20 years ago, so I decided to take it all back." The room got colder. Illinois shifted his weight, ready for violence. Bumpy raised one hand, kept him still. 1942. Victoria continued. crossing her legs. You remember that year I was 23. You were 30. We were going to leave New York together. Start fresh in Chicago. I sold my father's business. Liquidated everything. Waited at Penn Station with 2 suitcases and my entire life in cash. Her eyes were dead. You never showed up. Sent Illinois instead with a note that said business complications. 3 words after 3 years together. I waited 6 hours. Then I understood. You'd chosen Harlem over me. Chosen your empire over us. That's ancient history, Bumpy said. Ancient history. Victoria laughed, sharp and bitter. You moved on, married Mamie, built your kingdom. I had nothing. No money, no prospects, no future. So I did what you would have done. I survived. Found Frank Costello at his lowest point. Made myself indispensable. Married him 6 months later. Spent 2 decades learning every secret, every operation, every weakness in his organization. She leaned forward. Then I started planning. Not revenge, Ellsworth. Justice. The kind you talk about but never actually deliver. Frank Costello coughed, blood on his handkerchief. Victoria didn't even glance at him. That told Bumpy everything he needed to know about their marriage. The rape was real, Bumpy said, voice like breaking glass. Claudette Williams suffered. 4 women before her died or disappeared. You orchestrated that to get to me. I orchestrated it to expose what you really are. Victoria's voice turned to steel. A hypocrite. You preach justice, execute rapists, play the hero of Harlem. But your organization runs on violence just like ours. The only difference is you convinced yourself you're righteous. So I created a situation where you'd have to choose between your principles and your survival. Claudette was collateral damage. Unfortunate but necessary. Illinois took a step forward. Bumpy stopped him with a look. The photographs, Victoria continued, were insurance. FBI agent. Dirty cops. Frank's men, your dealers. All in one frame. Mutually assured destruction. If anyone moves against me, those photos go public. Everyone falls together. Except you, Bumpy said. Except me, she smiled. I've been running Frank's empire for 2 years now. He doesn't know it yet. But every captain, every soldier, every operation answers to me first. When this is over, when you're dead and Frank's in prison, I'll be the one holding all the power. Not as Frank's widow, as Victoria Costello, the woman who destroyed the 2 most dangerous men in New York. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Frank Costello made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and a death rattle. Victoria finally looked at him, mild interest, like watching a bug struggle on its back. You knew, Frank whispered. You've been poisoning me. Arsenic, Victoria confirmed pleasantly. Small doses in your scotch for 26 months. Not enough to kill quickly, just enough to make you weak, confused, easy to manipulate. The doctors think it's cancer. They're wrong. It's me. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Even Illinois looked shocked. Bumpy studied Victoria like she was the equation he was solving. Beautiful, brilliant, absolutely insane. Why tell us now? Bumpy asked. Because you're out of moves. Victoria stood, smoothed her dress. 72 hours. Ellsworth. FBI raids your warehouses in 60 hours. Frank dies in 72 regardless of what anyone does. And you'll be dead or arrested by morning unless you do exactly what I say. She walked to the door. Stopped. Oh, and one more thing. The boy. Marco. He's ours. The world stopped. Bumpy's face went white. Illinois grabbed the table to steady himself. What did you say? Marco Duca. Victoria turned, eyes glittering with malice. 20 years ago, After you abandoned me, I discovered I was pregnant with your child, our son. I raised him alone, told him his father was a coward who chose power over family, told him every story about the great Bumpy Johnson so he'd hate you as much as I do. She opened the door. He's been working for me this entire time. The rape, the kidnapping, the photographs. All Marco. Your son destroying your world because I taught him to. Sleep well. Ellsworth. The door closed. Silence, like death. Bumpy sat there, every foundation of his world crumbling. A son. He had a son who hated him, who'd orchestrated atrocities in his name. Frank coughed again. Worse this time. Bumpy, listen, we're both dead men. But maybe we can choose how we die. That simple statement broke through Bumpy's paralysis. He looked at Frank Costello, his enemy for 30 years, and saw something unexpected. Desperation. Not for survival, for meaning. She's going to win, Frank said. Unless we stop her together. Illinois exploded. You want us to help him, this piece of garbage who's being played just like we are? Bumpy interrupted, voice quiet, deadly. Frank, you have 36 hours left, maybe less. Why should I trust you? Because Victoria took everything from both of us. Frank leaned forward, every word costing him strength. You think this is about you? She's using you to destroy me, using me to destroy you. Classic divide and conquer. We fight each other. She walks away with 2 empires. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, slid it across. Inside are the names of every person Victoria controls. Judges, cops, captains in my organization. She's been building her own network for years. This is her real army. Bumpy opened the envelope. 50 names. Half of them people he knew, trusted, worked with. The scope of Victoria's operation was staggering. There's more. Frank's breathing was labored. Marco isn't just your son. He's been trained since childhood for this moment. Victoria groomed him to be the perfect weapon. Smart, ruthless, loyal only to her. He believes every lie she's told him about you. Where is he now? Watching Claudette. Victoria's orders. If we don't deliver you in 36 hours, he kills her on camera and sends the footage to every newspaper in New York. Your reputation destroyed. Harlem in chaos. Me dead. You in prison. The walls were closing in. Every option led to death. Bumpy looked at Illinois, saw his own desperation reflected. What's your play? Bumpy asked Frank. Alliance. Temporary. You and me against Victoria. We have resources she doesn't expect us to combine. We pool our intelligence, our soldiers, our connection. We find Marco, flip him if possible, neutralize him if necessary. Then we take Victoria down before she inherits both our empires. You're asking me to save your life. I'm asking you to save Harlem. Frank met his eyes. I'm dead regardless. Poison's too far progressed. But if Victoria wins, she'll turn New York into a slaughterhouse. She doesn't care about codes, about civilians, about anything except power. I built a business. She wants to build an empire of corpses. Bumpy was silent, weighing options, calculating odds. Then he made the hardest decision of his life. Illinois, get our people. We're working with Costello until Victoria's neutralized. Illinois stared. Boss, you can't be. I can, and I am. Enemy of my enemy. We finish Victoria, then we settle our debts. But right now, she's the bigger threat. Frank nodded, respect flickering across his dying face. I'll make the calls. My captains will follow me one last time. 3 hours later, a warehouse in Queens became the war room. Maps covered every surface. Photographs of Victoria's known associates, patrol routes, safe houses, Bumpy's men and Costello's soldiers working side by side. Decades of hatred suspended by mutual survival instinct. Then the door opened. A young man walked in. 22 years old, dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that belonged to both Victoria and Bumpy in equal measure. Marco Duca. He stopped when he saw Bumpy. Something flickered across his face. Recognition. Hatred. Confusion. Marco. Frank's voice was a rasp. Sit down. We need to talk. Where's my mother? Your mother, Bumpy said quietly, has been lying to you since birth. Marco's hand moved toward his jacket. 10 guns pointed at him immediately. He froze. I'm not here to hurt you, Bumpy continued. I'm here to tell you the truth about me, about Victoria, about who you really are. For the next hour, they laid it out. Documents, photographs, testimonies. Victoria's lies, her manipulation, her poison, her plan. Every word Marco's face hardened, then cracked, then shattered. You abandoned us, he whispered finally. You left her pregnant and alone. I didn't know. Bumpy's voice broke. Son, I swear on everything I am, I never knew you existed. If I had, I would have come back. I would have chosen differently. Liar. But Marco's voice wavered. Look at the dates, Frank interrupted. Victoria never told Bumpy. She kept you secret deliberately. Because a son raised on hatred is a weapon. A son raised with love is a liability. She chose what you'd become before you were even born. Marco stared at the documents, his entire world collapsing. Finally, he looked up at Bumpy. Prove it. Prove you would have chosen us. I can't prove what didn't happen. Bumpy's honesty was brutal. I can only tell you that learning about you now, knowing what Victoria turned you into, is the worst pain I've ever felt, because you're my son. And I love you, even though you hate me, even though you help destroy innocent women. I love you because you're mine. Silence. Then Marco's shoulders shook. Not violence, grief. The grief of a man realizing his entire life was a lie. What do I do? He whispered. You choose, Bumpy said. Right now, mother or father, lies or truth. Help us stop Victoria, or watch her burn the world. Marco looked at his hands, hands that had tied rope, taken photographs, pulled triggers. If I help you, she'll know I betrayed her. She'll kill Claudette. Not if we move first. That's when the plan formed. Desperate, insane, the kind of plan born from men who had nothing left to lose. Bumpy would die. Publicly, dramatically, in a way that couldn't be faked. Frank would arrange it, make it look like a hit, spread the word through every channel. All of New York would believe Bumpy Johnson was dead. My funeral, Bumpy said, will be the biggest event Harlem's seen in decades. Every criminal, every politician, every person who owes me favors will attend, including Victoria. She'll want to see me buried to make sure it's real. And while she's gloating at your grave, Frank continued, we grab her, force her to call off her people, expose everything. What about me? Marco asked. You, Bumpy said, are going to do something much harder. You're going to go back to your mother, pretend you still hate me, and feed us intelligence until we're ready to strike. Marco closed his eyes, nodded once. When do we start? Tomorrow. Bumpy stood. Illinois, Get the mortician. We're staging a death. Frank, contact your media people. I want front-page coverage. Marco, go back to Victoria. Tell her I'm desperate, making mistakes. Make her confident." As the room emptied, Marco lingered. Bumpy turned to face him, father and son, strangers bound by blood and lies. "Why should I trust you?" Marco asked. "You shouldn't." Bumpy's voice was raw. "I've broken every promise I never knew I made to you, but I'm asking anyway. Trust me for 72 hours. Help me stop your mother. Then, if you still hate me, walk away. I won't follow." Marco studied him, looking for deception, finding only pain. 72 hours, he agreed. June 18th, 1962. Dawn breaking over Harlem. Bumpy Johnson walked into his own funeral home and lay down in a casket while makeup artists made him look dead. Outside, the city woke up to headlines. Bumpy Johnson assassinated. Harlem mourns. Frank Costello, dying but determined, made calls from his deathbed. "Victoria and I are remarrying. Public ceremony. 2 days from now. My final gift to her before I die." She accepted. Of course she did. Victory was too sweet to resist. Claudette Williams, terrified but resolute, agreed to be bait. "If this saves other women, I'll do it. But Illinois stays with me." "Always," Illinois promised. The trap was set. Bumpy's funeral would be tomorrow. Frank and Victoria's wedding the day after. Somewhere between grief and celebration. They'd strike. Marco delivered the message to Victoria. "Bumpy's dead. Frank's marrying you. It's over." Victoria smiled, raised her champagne glass. "To the end of an era, darling, and the beginning of mine." But that night, alone in her room, she opened a drawer and pulled out a photograph. Young Bumpy, young Victoria, arms around each other, laughing at some forgotten joke. She touched his face in the picture, and for just a moment, something human flickered across her expression. Then she burned it, watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash. "Sentiment is weakness," she whispered to herself. "And I am not weak." June 19th, 1962. Noon. Bumpy Johnson's funeral packed Abyssinian Baptist Church. 2,000 mourners. Half of them genuine. Half of them waiting to see if this was real. The casket was closed, respecting the deceased, which made it easier to hide the breathing man inside. Victoria sat in the front row. Perfect black veil. Perfect grief performance. She'd won. Finally. After 20 years, she'd won. The ceremony was beautiful. Eulogies praising Bumpy's contributions to Harlem, his fight for justice, his complexity. Mamie Johnson sobbed into a handkerchief. Her grief real even if the death wasn't. Then they carried the casket to the cemetery, lowered it into the ground, threw dirt on top. Victoria watched every shovelful, ensuring this was real, ensuring her victory was complete. "Goodbye, Ellsworth," she whispered. "You should have chosen me." That night, Frank Costello's estate blazed with lights. The wedding was tomorrow. Invitations had gone out to every power player in New York. Judges, senators, mob bosses, all coming to witness Frank's final act before death claimed him. Victoria supervised every detail. Flowers, music, seating arrangements. She wanted perfection. This was her coronation disguised as a wedding. Claudette arrived at midnight, wearing a waitress uniform, infiltrating the staff, Illinois beside her, disguised as security. They moved through the mansion, mapping exits, counting guards, preparing for war. In the basement, Bumpy Johnson climbed out of a laundry truck, alive, furious, ready to end this. Marco met him at the service entrance. She's in the master bedroom. 30 guards throughout the house. Once the ceremony starts tomorrow, she'll move to the garden. That's when we strike. Any sign she suspects? No. She thinks she's untouchable. Bumpy gripped his son's shoulder. First time he'd touched him. Thank you for choosing truth. Marco's eyes were wet. Don't thank me yet. She's still my mother. This is going to destroy me regardless of who wins. I know. Bumpy's voice was gentle. But some things are worth being destroyed for. Justice is one of them. June 20th, 1962, 4 in the afternoon. The wedding began. Victoria walked down the aisle in white, radiant, triumphant. Frank stood at the altar, corpse dressed in a tuxedo, playing his final role. The ceremony was beautiful, traditional, a perfect lie. The priest reached the vows. Do you, Frank Costello, take Victoria? Gunshots, screaming. Chaos erupted. 3 groups hit simultaneously. Bumpy's crew from the north, Costello's loyal soldiers from the south, and a third group nobody expected, Victoria's own captains, the ones Frank had secretly flipped with evidence of her poisoning him. The garden became a war zone. Tables overturned, guests diving for cover, bullets shredding the white roses Victoria had imported from Italy. Marco appeared at Victoria's side, gun drawn. She grabbed him. Get me out of here. He looked at her. His mother, the woman who'd raised him, loved him, weaponized him. I can't, he said. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You betrayed me. You betrayed yourself. Marco's voice broke. When you taught me to value power over people. When you turned me into a monster to hurt a man who didn't even know I existed. Victoria slapped him, hard enough to split his lip. Then Bumpy Johnson stepped out of the shadows, very much alive, gun pointed at her heart. Hello, Victoria. Miss me? Her face went white. Impossible. She'd watched him buried. This couldn't be real. Coffin was empty, Bumpy explained. Well, almost empty. We filled it with evidence. Every document, every photograph, every testimony about what you've done. When they exhume my body in 3 days for the investigation, Frank's lawyers already filed. They'll find enough to put you in prison for life. Victoria's composure shattered. You can't. I own half the police force. Owned, Frank corrected, stepping beside Bumpy. Past tense. I spent my last 48 hours calling in every favor, revealing every lie. Your network's collapsing as we speak. The gunfire intensified. Illinois appeared, Claudette behind him. Boss, we need to move. Victoria's guards are retreating, but a bullet caught Illinois in the chest. He stumbled, fell. Claudette screamed, dropped beside him. Illinois. Bumpy started forward. Marco dove, pushed him down as bullets sprayed overhead. Stay down. Illinois was bleeding out, Claudette pressing her hands against the wound, trying to stop the impossible. He looked up at her, smiled through the pain. Told you I'd keep you safe, he whispered. Don't you dare die on me. Claudette sobbed. Take care of him, Illinois said, looking past her to Bumpy. He needs someone to keep him human. Then he was gone, just like that. 23 years of loyalty, ended by a stray bullet in a garden of lies. The world slowed. Bumpy saw Victoria running, guards covering her retreat. Saw Marco frozen, gun in hand, caught between parents. Saw Claudette weeping over Illinois's body. Saw Frank collapsing. Poison finally winning. He made a choice. Ran after Victoria. Through the mansion, up the stairs, to the roof where a helicopter waited. She was 10 feet from escape when he caught her. They fought, hand to hand. Brutal. 20 years of love and hatred compressed into violence. Victoria was skilled, trained, desperate. She got a knife into Bumpy's side. He didn't slow down, disarmed her, threw her against the helicopter. "It's over," he said. She laughed, blood in her teeth. "It'll never be over. I'll escape. I'll rebuild. I'll come back and destroy everything you love." He raised his gun. One shot would end it. Justice, revenge, peace. Marco appeared in the doorway, gun shaking in his hand, pointed at his father, then at his mother, back and forth, unable to choose. "Marco," Victoria called. "Baby, shoot him. Shoot your father. He abandoned us. He deserves to die." "Marco," Bumpy said quietly, "I love you, regardless of what you choose." The gun wavered. Marco's face was destroyed. A young man being torn in half by biology and loyalty. Then Frank Costello stumbled onto the roof, dying, barely standing, but somehow still moving. He walked past Bumpy, past Victoria, stood at the helicopter door. "This ends now," he said. He pulled a vial from his pocket, drank it. Within seconds, his face went gray. The poison he'd been taking slowly, now taken all at once. "What did you do?" Victoria screamed. "Balance the scales." Frank fell to his knees. "I enabled your evil, protected you, married you knowing what you were. My death is payment for my sins." He looked at Bumpy. "But my final act is removing your choice. You don't have to kill her. I already did." He grabbed Victoria, pulled her close, whispered something in her ear, then fell backward off the roof, taking her with him. They fell together, husband and wife, villain and enabler. Gone. Marco ran to the edge, looked down at his mother's broken body. Bumpy stayed back, giving his son space to grieve. Below, Claudette's voice screamed through the chaos, "Don't I know how to end this?" But Victoria survived, broken spine, shattered legs, but alive. The fall killed Frank instantly. She lived to face something worse than death. Claudette stood over her hospital bed 3 days later, flanked by federal prosecutors and Bumpy. Victoria's eyes were hollow, defeated, watching her empire collapse on the television mounted above her. Every captain arrested, every judge exposed, her name becoming synonymous with poison and betrayal. "You wanted to kill me," Claudette said quietly, "but I'm choosing differently. You'll live, Victoria. Live long enough to watch every dollar you stole get redirected. Every property, every account, everything Frank built and you corrupted. It's all going to build schools. Schools for black children in Harlem. Your legacy won't be power. It'll be education you tried to destroy." Victoria's face twisted. "You think that's mercy? That's torture?" "Yes," Claudette agreed. "It is." Within the week, Marco disappeared, left a note for Bumpy on the kitchen table. "I can't be your son or her weapon anymore. I need to find out who I am without either of you. Forgive me." He enrolled in a monastery upstate, seeking redemption through silence and prayer, refusing to see either parent for years. The choice broke Bumpy, but he understood. Some wounds needed distance to heal. That understanding pushed him further. He dismantled his organization piece by piece, turned every illegal operation into legitimate business, funneled dirty money into clean investments. The transformation took 3 years. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson became a philanthropist, funding community centers, hiring ex-convicts, building the Harlem his violence had once protected and simultaneously destroyed. A decade passed with the weight of consequence. June 1972. Bumpy stood in front of the Illinois Gordon School for Excellence, watching 500 children pour through doors that wouldn't exist without blood money turned righteous. Claudette walked beside him, principal's badge gleaming, gray in her hair but fire still in her eyes. He would have hated the attention, she said, touching the bronze plaque bearing Illinois's name. He would have loved that we remembered. Bumpy replied. Across town, Victoria Costello sat in a wheelchair in a rent-controlled apartment, watching that same school on the news. Her name had been erased from every building, every document, every history. She existed only as a cautionary tale. The woman who wanted everything and ended with nothing. Some days she wished Frank's fall had killed her too. Most days she just wished she'd chosen love over revenge 20 years ago. In a small church in the Catskills, Father Marco Duca delivered Sunday Mass to 12 parishioners. He'd taken his mother's maiden name, shed both parents' legacies, found peace in serving others. He'd forgiven them both in letters he never sent, understanding that forgiveness was for him, not them. Then came the morning that changed everything, one final time. October 1974. Bumpy Johnson died in his sleep. Heart attack. Peaceful. The funeral packed Abyssinian Baptist Church again. But this time the grief was universal and real. Victoria came. Wheelchair pushed by a nurse, sitting in the back where nobody would notice. She stared at the casket, tears running silently down her face. Not for the man he'd become. For the boy he'd been when they were young and stupid and in love before ambition poisoned everything. Marco stood at the pulpit in priest's robes, hands shaking, voice steady. Ellsworth Johnson was not a perfect man. He broke laws. He hurt people. He made choices that destroyed lives, including his own family's. But somewhere in the last decade of his life, he chose to change. Chose to build instead of break. That choice doesn't erase his sins. It just proves that redemption is possible even for those who have fallen furthest. He looked directly at his mother. That choice is available to all of us. Every single day. Until our last breath. Victoria closed her eyes. Understanding finally arriving too late to matter. The programs handed out at the funeral listed Bumpy's legacy. 53,000 children educated through his foundation. 200 ex-convicts employed. 12 community centers. 4 hospitals. 1 school named after a loyal friend who died protecting what was right. Claudette spoke last. Real victory isn't destroying your enemies. It's making them weep at your funeral. Because they finally understand what they lost when they chose hate over humanity. Outside, even the hardest criminals cried.